Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Star Wars Underworld Podcast, your weekly source for all the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. And this week, we're breaking down the brand new trailer for LEGO Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, Pieces of the Past, the 4-part sequel to last year's 4-part event, dropping September 19th. That's just a little over a month away. Who says there's no new Star Wars until Mandalorian and Grogu? There's plenty of new Star Wars. We're going to have some fun talking about that. There's some other news stories we're going to get to that are kind of interesting, and we'll answer all of your questions in another beloved, iconic, delightful edition of Ask the SWU. First, though, introductions are in order in case you're new to the show or you've forgotten who we are. That can happen. And my name is Dominic Jones, and with me, as always, is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld. It's
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Yes.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Star Wars rules. This is momentous. This is exciting. Why, hello there, Ben.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
He is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Mr. Ben Hart.
How's it going, everybody?
Ben, to honor the fact that we were 30 minutes late because your computer decided to break down. 90 minutes would have been real bad. 90 minutes would have just canceled the show. 30 minutes late because your computer just decided it didn't want to work. I thought we'd start us off with a Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy. How you doing, Ben? How you feeling now that the computer's finally working?
No, it's especially good to be here. Now, of course, that little song of yours, it kind of gives me low-key PTSD, if I'm being honest, because I always hear it when I'm in a stressful situation.
Yeah.
When I'm
it's
like,
always a bad
why
thing.
isn't anything working? And that was how I was about 5 minutes ago until I was just like, okay, great, everything's fine, and we're go. Just push the button, let's go. So I'm here now. Hi, how's it going, guys? Yeah, we have some stuff to talk about. There's new Star Wars. Yeah, it's happening, guys. There's new Star Wars on the horizon. Yes, it's Lego. It's kind of my favorite Star Wars to look forward to because everyone is just like, yeah, it's not canon, blah blah blah. Who cares? And all the people that care too much don't care about this, and all the people that are like us. They're like, we're just looking forward to it. This is the best kind of stuff. Love it.
Yeah, it's the stuff where you can you kick back and you enjoy it, and if you don't enjoy it, you don't feel like it's a big missed opportunity. You feel like it was just a thing. It was a bit of fun, and you can move on. But the thing was about the last one was so good that I almost feel like the bar has been raised to a height that this one now actually has to worry about clearing it, which I don't think the first one really did. The first one kind of could just come in and be a fun, weird, quirky thing. This one, now we know what to expect. We've seen how good this can be.
The bar has been raised. I will grant you that, but I'm very much looking forward to it. I will say Lego Star Wars, Rebuild the Galaxy, Pieces of the Past. Bit of a mouthful, especially as someone in this line of work that has to type that over and over again and say that over and over again. It's a bit of a mouthful, guys. Did you really have to add the subtitle? Could you just tell us Rebuild the Galaxy 2? Like, would that have killed you?
What they should have called it was Rebuild the Galaxy, Pieces of the Past, a Lego Star Wars story.
Yeah.
I think that would have been good.
Gallery, Lego Star Wars, Rebuild the Galaxy, Pieces of the Past, a Star Wars story.
Why don't we get Disney galleries for these? They should get them. I would so watch a Disney gallery for this.
I mean, there is people that actually work on this stuff. They like animate this stuff. That do painstaking amounts of CGI animation to make it look like real Lego when it is in fact not real Lego. So I would be very interested to see the behind the scenes of this, how they create this stuff and whatever, because it's a lot of work, a lot of amazing talent as we get into behind the scenes and the voice cast and obviously with the animators. So yeah,
there's not nearly enough behind the scenes about the Star Wars animation. We get like a panel every 2 years at Celebration that goes into it, and the rest of the time you're just left to guess. And there's so much. There's so much.
Mind you, when Rebels was on, we got like a full-length documentary about each and every episode. Now we're like begging for crumbs for anything, even the live action stuff.
It was 8 minutes. It wasn't full length. It makes it sound like we were getting like 2 hours.
It was a featurette.
Yeah, they were great. Rebels Recon is one of those, we didn't know how good we had it things, because it was really insightful. It would have goofy bits with the chopper cam and stuff that would be hit and miss, but overall it would give you a real insight into the making of that show. And it's a shame that they seem to have really, really, really scaled back on the amount of what do you want to call it, in-house production over there at StarWars.com. Right. They've left that to us essentially, which is fine. They've left it to the fans, and there's lots of fans doing great stuff. I'm not saying we're the best or they're the only ones doing it or anything. There's lots of people doing it far better than we do. But the fans don't have the access, right? That was always the thing about those shows, whether it was Rebels Recon or the Star Wars show, or was it Clone Wars Rewind or something? They had something that was on
something Clone Wars,
season 7 that were really, really good as well. And they had access to all the people. They had access to Filoni and Pablo and Killian Plunkett, Joel Aaron, Amy Beth Christensen, Athena Portillo, like all the people that were working on the show. They could interview them and they could get some insight. And you just don't get that anymore. It either gets crammed into one Disney Gallery special or gets saved for these physical media releases that I feel like don't get the same amount of love that they used to back in the day. Like the Rebels DVDs and the Rebels Blu-rays for the later seasons were really, really good. The first seasons weren't so great. They didn't have much. The season 3 and 4 was really good. The Clone Wars Blu-rays were always great. They always had a ton of good stuff on it. And now they just don't. I mean, Bad Batch isn't even available on Blu-ray. You couldn't get it even if you wanted to.
That is crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. So we'll get into Lego Star Wars here in just a moment. Before we do that, couple of plugs. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on Spotify, subscribe wherever you get your shows. The subscribe button, Chewy. If you're enjoying the show and you want to make sure your comment gets read, or you just want to support what we're doing here, you can super chat with us live every week. You can also become a channel member in between shows. We're not one of those like cool on the ball people who you become a channel member and you get stuff. This is truly like the tip jar. This is like, you don't know what to do with your pennies when you're leaving the convenience store, so you put it in the jar. That's what we've got going on here.
Well, they always say, over deliver, under promise, or something like that. We don't promise anything.
Yeah,
we promise our undying admiration of you.
That's exactly it.
That's what we promise.
That's exactly it. If you are listening on a platform that lets you leave a review, please leave a review, or just like leave a comment on YouTube if you're enjoying it. That would be fun. They'll help pump up the algorithmic fun.
And if you want to leave a bad review, first of all, what are you doing? This is free content. What is wrong with you? Just enjoy it or don't.
Exactly. And you can tell us whether you like the show or you don't like the show by joining our Discord. Join the Discord, link in the description. Fun stuff happens there all the time. Ben, are you still trying to figure out how to beat a water monster?
No, I missed last week. But we are gearing up for another thing. We're actually doing 2 game nights on the Discord. There's even more happening than usual on the Discord. So we've got D&D, we've got normal games with Fortnite, Minecraft, whatever else happening, and then eventually we'll get into some movie nights again very soon. Maybe we have some things in the cooking that should be very, very exciting.
All right. And make sure you follow us in between shows at the SWU on social media. I know, Ben, your favorite is the Butterfly app. That's the one that gets a lot of love, as is the Instagram. You can check us out over there as well.
You're such a boomer.
That's
their Instagram.
The Instagram. You send a telegram instantly. It's incredible. And also check out the other shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, including the Raeside, Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, the Tractor Beam, and more. I know there's been lots of good post San Diego Comic-Con coverage on Ion Cannon and the Tractor Beam. So if you are still wanting to hear about Comic-Con this year, go check those out. They're good time. They're good time. It's not Comic-Con, but it's along the same lines. I have some news to share. Fan Expo Canada is coming up in actually less than a week now. This time next week, Day 1 will have taken place. But that's not important. What is important is days 2 and 3, because those are the days that I have got panels on that you can come to at Fan Expo if you're in Toronto. The first one is on Friday, August 22nd, which also happens to be my birthday. It's at 10:30 a.m. in Theater 5, aka room 709, and it's called Star Wars: The Untold Stories. That's right. There's so much good Star Wars to talk about, but we're choosing to discuss all the things that didn't happen. This is going to be like a trip through alternate Star Wars history. We're going to talk about Star Wars Underworld, the TV show, not us. I'm not just going to do a panel about this podcast. We're going to talk about what that show is going to be, what happened, why it didn't happen. We're going to talk about Star Wars Detours, what happened there, why didn't it happen. We're going to get into some of the original plans for Clone Wars seasons 6, 7, and 8. We'll go over that. And we're also going to look back on George Lucas's original ideas for Star Wars, because they are very, very, very different from what we ultimately wound up with, but also kind of the same. It's really fascinating. You'll read a little snippet of something that George wrote back in the 70s, like the early 70s, and you'll go, I recognize like 7 things in this, but it's also nothing like the Star Wars we know and love. So that's Star Wars: The Untold Story. Friday, stories, I should say. Friday, August 22nd, 10:30 a.m. Theater 5, room 709. And then on Saturday, August 23rd at 4:15 p.m., again in Theater 5, that's room 709, we're going to do Celebrating Star Wars. It's going to be like Star Wars Celebration crammed into 45 minutes. We're going to have a great panel of Star Wars fans talking about what we love about Star Wars, getting into our favorite parts. It's just going to be a wide-ranging, fun conversation about Star Wars. We did one of these last year at Toronto Comic-Con, and it was a really, really, really great time. And so we're going to try and recapture some of that magic at Fan Expo this year. So again, Celebrating Star Wars, Saturday, August 23rd, 4:15 p.m., room 709, aka Theater 5. So do come out to both of those panels if you're going to be at Fan Expo next weekend. All right, let's get into Rebuild the Galaxy. We've talked about this a little bit already, but they dropped a new trailer for the upcoming season specials. I don't know what we're exactly supposed to call it, but it's the sequel to last year's Rebuild the Galaxy 4-part extravaganza, we'll call it. Ben, we've seen the trailer. What did you think of it? How are you feeling? How are you feeling going into Pieces of the Past?
Yeah, no, this is very, very cool, very exciting. It's great that we have a. I think this feels like the next step for Lego to do. They've done the specials, they've done the big kind of movies in a way. Um, Now kind of giving a full. I know they have like the new Yoda Chronicles and stuff like that. Like they have a lot of smaller series that were like web series. Like this is a full fledged like Disney Plus show that we're getting, and it's seemingly going to go on because like I assumed like the whole premise of like, oh, the galaxy gets mixed up and everything like that's a perfect thing to do in Lego. But then I'm like, well, clearly this is just going to be a one-off thing, and they'll get it all back together at the end, and everything will be normal. And the crux of it, spoiler alert, that they don't fix it in the end, I think sets it this perfectly to continue on the story. And there's so many cameos, so many great things. Obviously, the big one at the end is Jackson.
Yes.
Finally making his way onto screen. But then there's obviously the Mandalorian, who was teased last season. And Brickhead's Ahsoka's in there, and someone spotted the Bad Batch. There was Wrecker and Hunter and Omega and Crosshair are in there somewhere. So and D. Bradley Baker obviously is probably gonna be all over this. I can only imagine they won't miss a chance to give them a proper cameo at some point. But just so much. I love it. It's the true spirit of the Lego franchise, which is just bonkers, insanity, comedy, but also a lot of heart to it, and very cool because like you see the two brothers like teaming up seemingly, and so that's like, okay, that's interesting. That's almost a spoiler maybe, but very, very curious to see. Like, I'm invested in the story now. I want to see where this goes.
Yeah, that was what that like I was saying before, that was what surprised me about the first one, was that I got so invested in the storyline. Because like I've always enjoyed the Lego things, and when I think of the best Lego specials, I would think of like the early ones, like the Padawan Menace, the Empire Strikes Out, like things like that were just sort of straight parody. Like they just went for the jokes. It was like a joke. It was a joke every few seconds. They weren't really worried about the stories. And then as they kind of shifted into stuff that was a little bit more narrative focused, I started to fall off a little because I felt like they were losing sight of what Lego Star Wars's purpose is in the grand Star Wars scope. And then the Christmas special came out, the holiday special came out, and it like got them like back on track. And it was this like wonderful mix of heart, of story, and of course comedy. And then the other holiday specials, the Halloween one and the summer one, I thought were good, but not as good as the Christmas one. They were kind of keeping that energy going. And then this thing came along last year to replace the holiday specials, and it struck the balance so perfectly, because there are some really, 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 really funny moments. I am still impressed that they found a way 40 plus years later to do an "I am your father" joke that was actually funny. Because we've heard all of them before. We've heard all the iterations. I thought nobody was ever going to top Spaceballs with the, "I am your brother's cousin's former roommate." I thought nobody could ever top that. And then they have that great moment in the first one where I think Luke is explaining to Jedi Vader their relationship. And Vader goes, "I'm your what?" And I just burst out laughing. I thought it was so good. And but at the same time, the story of Dev and Sig, like, I got into it. And when they were having their lightsaber duel in the last episode, I was just intrigued to see what happened next. Like I almost forgot that it was meant to be jokes, and it just got invested in the story. And these guys who made these, I think it's the same guys who did it's Dan Hernandez and Benji Samit, right? Those guys, they did.
Yeah.
They're also working on the new Spaceballs movie, and they have a really like impressive track record. And I'm almost surprised that this is the only thing that they're doing in Star Wars. Like they almost feel like this is not beneath them, but like that they could elevate this even more. This could be, if they ever wanted to do the Lego Star Wars movie the way they did the Lego Batman movie, this could kind of be it. What they're doing here. This almost feels like it's bigger than a one-off all episodes drop on Disney Plus one day thing. It feels like it should be a limited series over the course of a month, or it should be like a movie event where maybe it doesn't get a wide, full Star Wars movie release, but get some limited screenings out there for people that want to see it, because it is, at least that first one was that good, and I have to imagine the second one will rival it in terms of quality. I at least have to hope that it does.
Yeah, it's still odd. Like, I'm still not fully over how they rolled out Andor, but like, I'm especially like kind of bewildered by like, why wouldn't you want to, drop one of these one per week? You have a few weeks there, you can build some hype, build some intrigue. I guess maybe they're worried that their attention won't be held, but I think these things speak for themselves. Like, there's some great storytelling here, and I think word of mouth is gonna be great. The fact that they're continuing this story, and hopefully they're going to continue beyond this, is a testament to like how people are invested in this. I think there's a lot of, it's not just kids anymore. Like, obviously kids, I think probably there's a ton of kids out there that Lego Star Wars is their Star Wars. That was their first introduction. Like, their first introduction to Star Wars was this weird ass, backwards rebuilt galaxy, and not the current one. But at the same time, like, it's perfectly valid. I think this is a great little gateway drug into into Star Wars, and I think it speaks for itself. So like, I would love to, because like, ultimately, again, 4 episodes dropping at once, it's hard to watch and consume this. It's in a short period of time.
It's got to me, I can see why they wouldn't want to draw it out. I don't think this has the same like get people to come back week after week that Andor or Ahsoka does. I think this should just be a movie. Just cut these episodes together into a movie, because it's what they basically are. That's how I watched the first one. Well, I watched it back to back to back to back. And I know you can say, well, you watched it back to back to back to back. I'm like, yeah, that is true. But I want the pizzazz of making it a movie. I want it to be the full, like, I don't want there to be breaks in between for credits and this sort of thing. Credits at the beginning, credits at the end. And I want to go see this in theaters. I'm sorry, I do. I want to go see this in theaters. I know they need to pump their subscribers for Disney Plus and all that. Not that I think this is really going to make anybody subscribe. It might get some people to keep their subscriptions, but I don't think it's driving subscriptions. That's why I'm saying limited theatrical release, get it out there. Let me pay the $12 to go see it in theaters, and I absolutely will.
Yeah, I feel like it does like open up options, like they can put it in theaters, and I feel like for me, if it's just a movie, if I'm just a rando and I kind of like Star Wars, or I'm just kind of into this stuff, like, it's a bit of a commitment to be like, oh, it's a limited series and I have to watch all these, versus like, oh, it's just a movie. I can just carve out a bit of time and I'll sit down and watch this one thing versus several pieces of it, pun intended. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that's they make a big deal about with this with these Lego specials is the cast, and this cast is wild. Here's what we've got. Including, so we got a lot of returners from season 1 and some new people. So Gaten Matarazzo is back as Sig, Tony Revolori is back as Dev, Bobby Moynihan back as Jedi Bob, Marsai Martin as Yessi, Michael Cusack as Servo, and Ahmed Best as Darth Jar Jar. Anthony Daniels is back as C-3PO, Sam Witwer as Maul, Helen Sadler as Darth Ray, Phil Lamar as Darth Kit Fisto, Matthew Wood as General Grievous, Jake Green as Greedo, Shelby Young as Princess Leia, Piotr Michael as Yoda, Matt Sloan as Jedi Vader, Trevor Duvall as Jedi Master Sheev, D. Bradley Baker as Darth Nubs, Naomi Aki as Jedi Janna, Kevin Michael Richardson as Jedi Jabba the Hutt, Kelly Marie Tran as Darth Rose Tico, special guest appearance by Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, and adding on to the cast, Jennifer Hill as Probe Droid Viper, Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka Tano, Catherine Tabor as Pirate Queen Amidala, Cameron Monaghan as Cal Kestis, Mika Futterman as Asajj Ventress, Andre Sokoluzzo as Cassian Andor, James Arnold Taylor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Brian George as Kiadi Mundi.
Wow,
what a cast! What I love about that is that nowadays they really do try to get, if not the main actor who plays the character, if there's like a secondary actor, like, Ewan McGregor isn't in it playing James Arnold Taylor, or isn't playing James Arnold Taylor. No, isn't playing Obi-Wan Kenobi. James Arnold Taylor is, though. And he at least did it on Clone Wars, so it feels consistent with Clone Wars. A lot, like I remember some of the early Lego specials, you'd have the voices show up and you'd be like, okay, cool. But you have somebody who plays this exact character in a different cartoon in the Clone Wars. Why haven't you got them over here? Why aren't you bringing them on?
Wasn't synergy.
Yeah. Whereas this go around, look, Ahmed as Jar Jar, Tony Daniels as 3PO, Whitwer as Maul, Phil Lamar as Darth Kit Fisto. Like now we're getting into the like deep cuts here of like he played Fisto was in what, like 4 episodes of the Clone Wars.
They got Brian George as Kia back. Like that's like, amazing.
But then you also do get some of the people from the movies and the other shows and games. Like Cameron Monaghan is coming in as Cal Kestis, Kelly Marie Tran, Naomi Aki back as Jedi Janna. Like that's awesome. Like it's great. It's great. And then Ashley as Ahsoka and Catherine Tabor playing Pirate Queen Amidala. That's an excellent twist on the character. I gotta say, that's something I'm really excited for.
And also has to be a subtle, very subtle nod to the fact that Keira Knightley plays
Elizabeth
the
Swan,
decoy, and then obviously she's the pirate queen in Pirates of the Caribbean. So they knew what they were doing. They're hoping people catch on to this stuff. I see what you're doing there.
That's a good one. And of course, Billy D. Williams as the Lando Lorian. Great moment. Great moment in
Billy
the trailer.
D is still doing this. Like
the
guy is like he's well within his right just to like let somebody else do Lando and just retire and just enjoy his retirement. No, he's still doing Lando after all these years.
Yeah, he's Lando. I love the line in the trailer. It's a baby Yoda, baby. It was pretty good. Pretty good. There's even more people in the cast. Alan Tudyk back as K2SO.
Yeah.
Another like person coming back from the movies. And as you mentioned earlier, Ben, Jackson making his debut, referencing the fact that he's a real deep cut, voiced by Ben Schwartz. Excellent casting.
I think he's gunning for being the Deadpool of Star Wars, just like being very self-aware of the fact that he's ridiculous and that no one knows who he is except the true fans. Wink, wink.
The true deep cuts. Yeah. So Rebuild the Galaxy, September 19th, Pieces of the Past, the 4-part sequel series. I gotta think there's at least one more season of this. I think we gotta do a trilogy. I think that, and then who knows? I mean, because they're making also, I think this came out a few weeks ago. I don't know if it was leaked. We don't cover Lego leaks because Lego don't sue us. But I think it was actually officially announced that they had it's the Hoth speeder, but it's not. It's got like flames on it. Yes, that was
in the trailer, and it's actually going to be a real set you can buy. And I remember last year at Comic-Con they had some of the actual sets there.
Well, you could get the evil Millennium Falcon. That set's
that one's still out there. And also, I love the fact that we get the Porgil. Are they the Porgil? The giant porgs flying through hyperspace, and
so good.
They're literally just flapping their wings and going. And there's a little tiny. They don't make the giant like Millennium Falcon, Dark Millennium Falcon, small. They just they make a little teeny tiny mini version of the Millennium Falcon that's flying out of one of the porgs' mouths in the trailer, which is pretty ingenious. I like that a lot.
It's pretty good. So we will, of course, return to Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy Pieces of the Past the week after September 19th, so we can break it down and dissect it in highly unnecessary detail. But we're going to have a great time talking about it. So we will return to it.
Can I do a Ben's Connection corner with something that's not canon technically? Can I do that?
Absolutely. We'll have the song ready and everything.
All right. Well, I'll have to bring my A game then.
You thought you were getting away with not doing a Ben's Connection.
No, I never think I'm getting away with anything on this show. Seriously.
All right, let's move on here and let's get to some of the other news. This is kind of interesting. Ron Howard was out talking about he talked a little bit about Solo. He was a new interview with Vulture, and they asked him about what it was like to take over that movie after Phil Lord and Chris Miller had directed, I think, like 2/3, 3/4 of it at that point. Certainly a very, very large amount of it had already been shot, and then he had to come in and basically redo a whole bunch of it. This is what he said. Ron Howard said, "I'd always been curious about Star Wars, and Solo landed in my lap when I didn't have another movie set to go. They basically said, we've reached a creative impasse with Lord and Miller. Would you ever consider coming in? I looked at some edited footage and I saw what was bothering them. There was a studio that liked the script the way it was and wanted a Star Wars movie, but there was a disconnect early on tonally, and they just weren't convinced that what Phil and Chris were doing was working effectively. I couldn't judge that because I didn't see enough of it to know, but they were sure. Once I said, okay, I think I can do this script and I understand what you want of this script, they said we'd want to reshoot a lot of it. I looked at the whole movie and then pointed out some things that I thought were great, and Phil and Chris were really incredibly gracious throughout that process. They were just seeing two different movies. So I came in, I had a blast, but there's nothing personal about that film whatsoever. It's just a shame. I can't wait for Phil and Chris's next movie." Like that. There's nothing personal about that movie. I don't think that Ron Howard meant that is in like a slight.
I think what the words on a page are not conveying is like Ron Howard trying to say that, oh, there's nothing personal between us, but it sounds like he's saying, oh, there's nothing personal about this movie. I just did it, blah blah blah.
He's saying Solo is soulless. Bad. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, this doesn't come across great. Ben, what do you think of that quote? It's been a while since we've really spent a lot of time thinking about what went down with Phil Lord and Chris Miller. What do you think of what's old Opie there has to say about
well, I mean, yeah, it is. It's always fascinating to hear, because I think you don't hear people like Ron Howard like talk about stuff like this. You don't hear anybody in the industry, but especially like Ron Howard, who is this like especially someone like Ron Howard, who is this legendary filmmaker, who is obviously seems to have a great, highly respected in the community. Obviously he's not going to go around like spreading gossip on movie sets and stuff like that. Like he's not like spilling tea going on podcasts being like, I heard Kathleen Kennedy said about Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Like he's not doing that. Like he's a highly professional guy. But I like that we still get some interesting takes on this from him in this interview. And I highly recommend read the whole interview, because he has some other stuff to say about some other things too. But he talks about Willow and all kinds of stuff. But it's still fascinating after all these years, because he says, he calls it a shame. He calls it a thing. And I think it was a shame. I think it was a situation, because I can't help but side with the filmmakers and I can't help but side with the directors in the situation, because I'm like, it still boggles my mind. Like, how does this happen? How do you do this? How do you get to a situation where you've hired these guys, you've talked to them seemingly for months and months and months, and you get halfway through the production and they're like, oh, this isn't working. Like, how do you make this happen?
You know what it's like? It's like when you have friends that are a couple and they've been together for a really long time, and then they suddenly they get married and everything seem happy, and then they suddenly break up and you wonder why, and then you find out it's because one of them wanted kids and the other didn't. And it's like, that feels like a conversation you should have had a long time ago.
Did you not talk about this on the third date? When did this not come up?
How were you guys? How was Lord and Miller and the Kasdans and everyone else at Lucasfilm? How were they on such completely different pages this far into production? Was there no vetting process? And by vetting, I don't mean like police background checks. I mean shouldn't you have interviewed talked to other producers that you that worked with them, that shouldn't you have interviewed them? Shouldn't you talk to other cast members? Shouldn't you have had a sense of what these guys were like to work with? Shouldn't you have gotten that vibe? Shouldn't you guys have discussed your processes while you're in all of these meetings ahead of time? I just want to know how it went so wrong. That's my question, because it's not like with some of the other situations, you sort of get it. Like, like Josh Trank, the guy was a young up and coming filmmaker. He had made like one really big movie, and he had another big studio project that kind of went sideways. And his career's never really bounced back from Fantastic Four and losing Star Wars.
Right.
Colin Trevorrow, they just had a different vision from him for what they wanted the movie was, but they figured that out while they were writing it. They figured that out then, so that then they could go their separate ways, and he can go back to doing dinosaur movies, and they could bring back J.J. Abrams. Like a lot of these times, you can sort of understand that people realize that the vision isn't there, it isn't shared, but it's early. It's early in the process. This was not. This was so late. They had shot so much of the movie. We were sitting around thinking, hey, they're going to be done shooting soon. And then all of a sudden there's this really weird post on StarWars.com saying that they're changing the directors. You kind of have to wonder like how it just got to this point. Because as I said, Phil and Chris, they're established guys, and they've gone on to do other things that have been really, really well received.
Oh yeah.
And I can sort of get, Lucasfilm being nervous or being concerned, but I question not sticking with them, not because I don't think Ron Howard came in and did a good job. You were saying, Ben, everything about Solo is unfortunate. It's like, yeah, everything about Solo is unfortunate except the finished movie, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that not enough people went to see it. It's unfortunate that it had this weird production. A lot of things are unfortunate about it. They didn't get a sequel, all of that, but the movie itself is good. And so I think Ron Howard did a fine job with the movie, but I'm left to wonder what Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and if they had just stuck with it, it's not like these guys have had a series of bombs. Everything that they've done,
not at all,
has been well received, from 21 Jump Street and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs to the Lego movie to Spider-Man to the Apple TV series that they did. Like, all of that stuff has been really, really good. And the Project Hail Mary looks really good too. Like I kind of feel like Lucasfilm got cold feet unnecessarily and should have just stuck it out, and probably wound up with a movie that maybe didn't fit their boxed definition of what a Star Wars movie is. Because Solo certainly did that. It was very, very good, but it was very much within the lines. And maybe if they had done that, maybe the movie would have resonated a little bit more.
Yeah, I can't help but like I said, I'm kind of on knowing nothing about the breakup, knowing nothing about what actually happened behind the scenes. Like, I feel like, because I am very much like on the side of like, let a writer come in and do their thing. Like, I think that's the problem with Hollywood a lot of times, is that a director or a writer or something doesn't get to fully flesh out their vision. And also, like you're saying, at that point, Lucasfilm and especially the Kasdans need to suck it up, guys. You're halfway through this. I don't care if you don't like how the directors are directing. You signed up for this. You need to see this through and let the directors do their thing. But it sounds like they were just so panicky. And what Ron Howard is saying, like, they just were on completely different pages. They were making completely different movies, and they needed a way out. They needed someone to come in and quote unquote fix it. A la Tony Gilroy, with Rogue One. Obviously less, more of a thing, because obviously, Ron Howard seems like reshot a lot of it, but he also talks about how he was really kind of in Phil and Chris's corner in regards to salvaging some of the good stuff that he saw was in there. And I would love to know what it is that's in there that they shot. Like, I want to know, like, things, because obviously if there is stuff in there, it wasn't that different from what Ron Howard is. But at the end of the day, I'm really left. I still want a Phil Lord and Chris Miller movie, Star Wars movie, and I still want a Ron Howard Star Wars movie, because Solo is neither. Phil Lord and Chris Miller didn't get to see their vision through, and Ron Howard came through halfway and just said, yes, I'll do it. And it's neither of their movies. It's just a kind of a mishmash. And like I said, I love Solo. It's probably one of my favorite Star Wars movies, but it's a weird movie in production. And it's just gonna be one of those fun facts. 100 years from now, people like, hey, did you know they changed directors halfway through this? Like, like with Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz, all these legendary movies that changed directors and had multiple directors. Like, this stuff happens, but it still shouldn't have. And I think it's a black eye for Lucasfilm, allowing that to happen and make that happen. And seems maybe the slowdown in production, the fact that we haven't got a movie in quite some time, and the fact that some movies, rightfully so, have not gone into production, or some writers have been let go and whatever else. It bodes well for them maybe learning a lesson from that, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean this was the moment when we realized that there might be something going on behind the scenes at Lucasfilm that where they were struggling to get their movies made the way they wanted to get them made, because you had the first thing was the Josh Trank thing, and you just sort of thought, okay, that was just a maybe it was I don't even want to say it was a bad hire. It was the wrong time for that filmmaker, and so they moved off of that, and then you had the Rogue One reshoots, and you thought, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something. There's some oddness here. I'm curious what exactly is going on. And then this happened, and like a couple weeks later, the Trevorrow for Abrams swap happens, and you're left wondering, like, is it what's going on here? Are they just bad at picking people, or are they micromanaging people to the point where they can't get anything made? And look, we then went through an extended period where there were no more Star Wars movies. We're only just about to reemerge back into an era of Star Wars movies next year. We went through about 6 or 7 years here without a new Star Wars movie, which at one time would have been a short break, but we had gotten used to a movie every year, and we'd been led to believe we would get a movie every year. And then all of a sudden that stopped happening. And it wasn't like there weren't attempts to get the movies up and running. There was the Benioff and Weiss series. There was Rian Johnson's trilogy. Yeah. Patty Jenkins doing Rogue Squadron. That was supposed to happen. Taika's movie, which, seems to be back on track, but at one point, felt like that should have been coming out, 2022, 2023, somewhere in there. Not to mention, Mangold and Filoni and Sharmino Bay-Chinoy, all of them just kind of working in the background right now. You're left wondering, like, what exactly is happening here. And it if we trace it back, I think it really begins with Trank and then the Edwards Gilroy partnership swap, whatever you want to call that. But this was sort of the watershed moment, the breakthrough of like, something's off here. J.J. Abrams can make a movie. Rian Johnson can make a Star Wars movie. The two of them can make a Star Wars movie. Nobody else really can. Jon Favreau seems to have figured it out. Sean Levy seems to be figuring it out, although we don't know yet. They haven't started shooting.
It hasn't until they wrap production, and even until it gets to theaters, we don't know how that's going to shake out.
Levy's ready to start shooting later this year, but Phil and Chris got halfway through the movie before someone said no.
It is going to be interesting, especially because I always think about these things like, what are we going to view this in the future? Like, I think this period, that, the 2012 to 2025 period of Star Wars, I think is going to be a weird period, because it is that is like George leaving. Like before George, it was like everything went through him, and even the movies that weren't directed by him were kind of directed by him. Yeah. Empire, he stepped away and he was entrusting it to someone he really trusted, who was Aaron Kirshner, but then he comes back into the fold and he really micromanages Return of the Jedi. Some say he kind of ghost directed it, and then he directs all the other ones. And so like, it really was kind of this, like, George leaves a power vacuum, and like nobody knows what to do. And I have the utmost respect for everyone at Lucasfilm, including Kathleen Kennedy. But I think there was some growing pains in regards to figuring that dynamic out and figuring out, how the hell do you make a Star Wars movie? How do you do this, especially without George?
And I think there's also, we talk a lot about Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy takes a lot of the heat for this. And I'm not saying she shouldn't. I'm not saying that isn't fair, but I think another part of this is the Disney of it all. That now all of a sudden, starting in 2012 really, Star Wars and the Star Wars brand, the Star Wars movies, the Star Wars productions were answering to a board. They were answering to a for-profit company. They were answering to all that stuff. They weren't answering to an eccentric billionaire who just kind of wanted to do whatever. And I think the original idea was to have a little bit more of the just do whatever spirit to Star Wars. And that's why, okay, you start with J.J. Abrams. He's a really safe bet. But then you go after that with Gareth Edwards, Josh Trank, Ryan Johnson, Phil Lord, Chris Miller. They're maybe a little safer. Colin Trevorrow even was maybe a little bit more of a risk. Like, you start to go off with these more, up and coming upstart filmmakers, and kind of you're going to give them their big chance. And you're going with that spirit that George had of, I'm just going to do what makes sense to me. I'm going to make it how I want to make it. Not necessarily the audience be damned, but like, I'm just going to do it my way, and people will either like it or they won't. But I also know I'm going to put enough stuff in it for kids so that when the kids grow up, they really like it, which is what's since happened with the prequels. I think that was the spirit going into it. I think that's George probably told Kathy Kennedy that's what he wanted her to do. She probably said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. They went out and they hired all these filmmakers, and then all of a sudden the Disney board says to them, no, you can't be making weird eccentric Star Wars movies that only make, X millions of dollars. You need to make every Star Wars movie needs to be a smash hit. It needs to be the biggest thing. It needs to be, maybe doesn't need to be as big as The Force Awakens, but it needs to at least be Rogue One, if not bigger. And then then things kind of went sideways, because the attitude with which these guys were hired was not the attitude with which the company was run. Because, try as they might, the Kathy Kennedy, the Lucasfilm VPs, story group, whatever, not the story group really has that much to say in this sort of thing. Whoever these guys are, whoever's in charge of Lucasfilm, they are still answering to Disney, who is answering to the shareholders. And what do the shareholders want? They don't really care about good movies. They don't really care about good theme parks. They don't really care about, good cruises or TV shows or anything. They just want stuff that makes money. Typically, good movies, good theme parks, good cruises, good TV shows, all this stuff typically make money, but not always. And you might be a little bit more risk adverse to do something that could be great, but might look less great while it's being made, which is the story of Star Wars, right? Nobody believed in Star Wars when it was being made. Very, very, very few people did. Only Alan Ladd Jr. at Fox. He was like the one guy saying, no, we're going to let this guy finish his movie. Even though it looks bizarre, nobody understands what it is. And then it turned out to be this, massive thing that Disney would want to buy it years later, but then Disney buys it and they want to play it safe because that's how they think they're going to make their money. Even though it was the risks that made money in the first place for Star Wars.
And risk is a part of storytelling. Like that's that's the irony. That's the conundrum of filmmaking, of like, you have to be willing to step out on a limb and do a thing and keep all your fingers and toes crossed and hope it works out. And the people with the checkbooks are like, no, we can't do that. We can't take risks. We can't take risks. We have a lot of money. We have billions of dollars on the line. We have to do something safe. And you can't blame them when stuff happens, when good movies bomb and bad movies do good, and people will still be like, well, why do you keep doing this? Why did you make 8 Transformers movies? Nobody liked them. It's like, because they made money. They made oodles and oodles of money. That's why they kept making them. They made like 5 Sharknadoes because they made money.
Exactly. We'll move off of this. We'll get to this super chat from Joel as I think a good way to wrap up this segment. Joel says, glass half full though. We've gotten at least one live action project every year since 2015, so there is that to think about, which is a very fair point. We have been very, very, very lucky with a lot of Star Wars. Most of it very, very, very good, very good. Let's see what else we got here. This is kind of interesting. Gandi Tardikovski. Now that's a name I've not heard in a
long time.
A long time. He was interviewed recently, and look, he's the guy who made the Clone Wars micro series back in 2003. So like he hasn't been involved in Star Wars in a really long time. But he was interviewed by Inverse, and they asked him like, hey, if you were ever to come back to Star Wars, what would you want to do? What would that project be? And he said he wanted to do Asajj Ventress in live action. He said, if she becomes live action, super cool. And if they ask me to do it, that would be an interesting conversation. Be interesting. Look, Tardikovski is kind of an interesting guy in Star Wars history, right? Because, the Clone Wars micro series, I think, proved to George and a lot of people at Lucasfilm and Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers, that Star Wars on television was possible. Because there hadn't been Star Wars TV since the 80s with the Droids and Ewoks cartoons. And those weren't like smash hits by any stretch of the imagination. And, I think at that point, the most memorable piece of Star Wars television was the holiday special, which was an absolute disaster.
And it was memorable, all right.
Yeah, it was. And then along comes this Clone Wars micro series from, the Samurai Jack guy. And it really, I think, opened people's eyes to the possibility of expanding the universe on screen and in the animated medium. And, I wonder what Gandi's feelings are about Star Wars. If we gave him a little truth serum, do you think he'd be disappointed that he wasn't given the opportunity to essentially be Dave Filoni and, brought in to do the Clone Wars animated series that's, not the 2 to 12 minute specials, the little mini episodes, but is the, full 22-minute episodes, multi-episode arcs, season-long arcs, multi-season arcs across, 6 to 8 seasons, which would have been the plan at one point. Is, does he feel a little, little disappointed? Like, when he says that would be an interesting conversation, again, you're maybe putting something on those words that isn't there, just reading them off the page, but that feels like kind of a loaded statement.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating to think back. Like, we have Tardikovski to thank for the Bad Batch and Maul Shadow Lord and all the stuff that spawned, not just the Clone Wars, but all the stuff that spawned in Clone Wars, this renaissance of Star Wars animation. It all started with that micro series. And it was very different, and it was things, and obviously people still love that show. I still love that show. I go back, every once in a while I will watch it. Like it's great. And it is interesting how he just kind of disappeared as the guy as the Star Wars animation guy, even though he was very involved. And also we have a lot him to thank for Ventress. I think that obviously the character, I think, was based on some early Count Dooku designs that worked for an episode 2. And then that kind of put to the side, and then they bring her into Clone Wars. And, I think, to his point, barring any ill will he may feel or any being cheated out of a potential job at Lucasfilm, I think Ventress is a character that has endured. Obviously, she went away for a while. But now she's back, seemingly very, very much powerfully in regards to like her staying power and the fact that she's probably going to be in a lot of other stuff. And I think Tales of the Underworld is probably not the last thing we're going to see her in. And given we are in an era where Star Wars characters from animation are making the jump to live action, like I think that's things like. I don't know how much live action stuff Gandi has done. I'm very curious, how he would handle that. I would love to hear his take on that. Filoni, are you listening? Like that would be how interesting would that be? Of like, it comes back around, and Filoni is the person to hire Gandi to come back in and inform that. Have someone like Gandi who was there at the beginning to usher her into a new medium. So I don't know. Maybe he's hinting at something here. Maybe he's trying to put his things, because it was just kind of like, I know the interview was just like, hey, what do you think about this? And I think it was kind of they were kind of setting him up for that. But he definitely like seemed interested. So, like you said, truth serum withstanding. Would love to hear his thoughts more.
Yeah, I also wonder, like, if we just focus on Ahsoka, or not Ahsoka, on Asajj here for a second, like, how much does he know about what's happened with her story since then? Has he been keeping up? He kept up with the Clone Wars, kept up with Tales of the Underworld, Bad Batch. Does he know? Because I suspect there's a good chance that his perception of Ventress and where the character has wound up is very possibly quite different than the ultimate version that we know of these days. But it would be interesting, and much like with Lord and Miller, he's another guy that'd be kind of interesting to get him back on board with something. Get him to do a new animated series. If his style doesn't seem to be Clone Wars, but Clone Wars animation, for as much as I love it, and I love that it is sort of the standard for Star Wars animation these days, doesn't have to be the only thing. You can do other stuff. Lucasfilm Animation is a very interesting place with a lot of interesting people. I'm sure they could do more different and interesting animation forms, in addition to continuing on that sort of Clone Wars style legacy. Not unlike what they do with Visions. Visions is that kind of that one place where we see a different take on Star Wars animation, specifically like the animation part of it, beyond just the stories.
And I want to continue to beat the drum and fight against that innate feeling and that overall stereotype of just like, let's make this better by making it live action. It's like that. It's just another medium. It's not better or worse. It's just another medium for that sense. Like, what if you did, going back to her roots, what if you did an Asajj Ventress anime? Like, how cool would that be? Like a Star Wars Visions focused on Ventress. That would be sick, and I would love that. And so I think would be fascinating. Like, you can do a lot with that character. She was easily, like, I still say she's one of the best characters coming out of Clone Wars. So, like, we will watch her career with great interest, I suppose.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on here. Let's get to some questions from the audience. Let's get to our favorite segment. It's a time for Ask the SWU. This is where we kind of turn the show over to our listeners and answer some of the questions that you guys submit in our Discord or via super chats in our live stream. We'll start with one from the Discord. This one comes from Gilster10, who says, when rewatching the Clone Wars, is anyone else disappointed with how Count Dooku is portrayed? Compared to his appearance in Attack of the Clones, Dooku comes across more like a political puppet than a fully developed character until Tales of the Jedi was released. His appearances often lack clear personal motivations, whether power, ideology, or revenge, and the presence of characters like General Grievous, Asajj Ventress, and Palpatine make his role as an evil mastermind feel redundant. He ends up resembling a generic Saturday morning cartoon villain, which is frustrating. I wish Dooku had been more like Baylan Skoll, a former Jedi Knight turned disillusioned by the Clone Wars, who ultimately sees both the Jedi and Sith as destructive forces in a never-ending cycle. In many ways, Skoll feels like the natural evolution of Dooku's arc, someone who came to the same realization, but refused to stay strapped in the Jedi-Sith paradigm. I know Son of Dathomir briefly shows Maul and Dooku teaming up and shows an interesting side of being a Sith apprentice, but Maul's return really makes Dooku feel like one of the weakest Sith Lords in the franchise, and they barely got his moment to shine. Part of me thinks Christopher Lee's performance in the films helped elevate the character and helped overcome some of George Lucas's writing flaws, especially considering that Lucas originally wanted Dooku to beg for mercy, but Lee overruled it. What do you guys think? Do you think Dooku's performance in Clone Wars leaves a lot to be desired, or am I being too harsh?
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. I always thought Dooku was an interesting character, and it was one of those things that the longer Clone Wars went on and the less time we ever got to spend with him was always one of those things like, it would be nice if we could get to this. And when we didn't, it felt odd. And so when Dave announced that that the first season of Tales would be half Ahsoka, half Dooku, it felt like we were kind of righting a wrong or correcting this step from back in the day. And I think Dave felt the same way, because he kind of talked about it when he announced the show, that Dooku was a character he never really got to do anything with. And I think that a lot of that comes down to George Lucas and his influence on the Clone Wars. I don't think George, by the time Clone Wars had come around, I don't think George was particularly enamored with Dooku. And I think he saw him kind of as a Saturday morning cartoon villain, because remember, George's original conception of Star Wars is as, these serials, is like Buck Rogers, it's Flash Gordon, and the villains in those weren't necessarily always the most deep, interesting villains. They could be, but they weren't always. And I think Dooku kind of winds up falling into that category. I also think that Dooku originally was meant to have more of a role in episode 3 that would have expanded his character out a little bit more, would have given us more time with him, because really he's only in the back half of episode 2 and the beginning of episode 3, and yet he's supposed to be this really important character. And when because I think you look at all of the plot lines from Attack of the Clones that get dropped in Revenge of the Sith, like it's all the stuff that sort of surrounds Anakin. It's the Sifo Dyas mystery. It's Boba Fett. Right. It's all of those things. And Dooku kind of fits in more with those storylines than anything else in episode 3.
Right.
And so you couldn't just kill him off in between movies. You couldn't write him out the way you write out the Sifo Dyas mystery and Boba Fett. But you kind of have to get rid of him pretty early in the movie and to make a statement about Anakin's journey, and to also have that opening for Palpatine to want Anakin to be there. So, I think if we looked at, some of George's original notes for episode 3, like the stuff he was writing in late 2002, early 2003, maybe you see Dooku living on through more of the story. But yeah, it's a shame that Dooku never really got his moment in the sun. They chose to, when it came to adding more depth to villains on Clone Wars, they went with Ventress, they went with Maul. And Dooku was kind of just left there as the one cartoon villain left standing, because really those other guys, when you start off, are far more cartoony than Dooku. Dooku's like an old man. General Grievous is a cyborg. Maul is Satan. Ventress is this bald lady with white skin and dark eyes. Like, all of this stuff is there. That's way more of a cartoon villain than Christopher Lee. Just Sir Christopher Lee. Yet they all wound up being, enhanced and got deeper. Grievous less so. He got one episode in season 1 and then kind of was left to be the cartoon villain.
Right.
But Dooku just he never got his moment. And who knows, maybe later seasons could have done more with it. There was going to be the Dark Disciple storyline, and I think he's pretty interesting in there, although he is still much more of a foil than anything else. And maybe there were other stories that could have been done in seasons 6, 7, and 8 had they been produced as they were originally conceived. That could have done more, or maybe we still would be having this conversation of why didn't they do more with Dooku.
Yeah, I mean, Dooku is, you take everything into account. Like, I'm thinking of Dooku Jedi Lost, that book that I listened to way below. I don't remember loving that story that much. I do remember it being very interesting and look into Dooku's character, and I think a lot of Dooku's interest involves Christopher Lee. Mm-hmm. As a person, endlessly fascinating person, and he brought so much gravitas to that role. But yeah, in Clone Wars, he's not that interesting. He really is a kind of a one-note villain, just evil for the sake of being evil. There's no real motivation there. There's no examination, as you stated. Ventress gets a character arc, a brilliant character arc. Even Grievous gets a little bit of backstory. You get to learn a little bit about why he is the way he is. Dooku, you get nothing. And I think, I don't know, it's just how the mechanics of things. I think it's what George wanted, obviously, and that's what they did. But like you have you have Sidious there, and like Sidious doesn't have that much of a role early on in the show, but as they go on, like he shows up and he does stuff in person sometimes. Or being mind blown at that, him showing up on Mandalore that one time. So like you wonder, like, what is Dooku's place in things where he's not this master manipulator. He is kind of getting in there and doing the dirty work sometimes. But he is someone who should have some very complicated things. He is a former Jedi. He is this very interesting thing. Like some of the more interesting stuff with him is when you go to Raxus and you see the Separatist Senate, you see him leading that and stuff like that. And yeah, there's some real cool stuff in Dark Disciple. If you haven't read that, one of the best Star Wars novels money can buy, in my opinion, Dark Disciple. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Again, it's not in the books. I don't think it would have been in the show either, probably, had it been some of the good stuff. But yeah, it is disappointing looking back on the show. I think Clone Wars was endlessly. It took its time, and obviously there were some things. Ventress, very one-dimensional in season 1, and then you get to season 3, it's like, oh, okay, everything has changed. This character is so different now. So yeah, I feel Glitzer. I feel your pain. I feel like it's interesting. Even some of this comic stuff that we got is really interesting, and Baylan Skoll is a great example of a character that is way more there in regards to the nuance and the complication of a Jedi that is disillusioned with the Order. We got it with Ahsoka, and maybe that was the whole point, that Dooku wasn't the character that we were going to see that point of view shown through, that Dooku was the bad guy. And I get that, but it would have been interesting. I think it's amazing that they get those two arcs together in Tales of the Jedi, Ahsoka and Dooku. Would have loved to see them cross paths. Like that's a Dooku and Ahsoka in the same room together. Like they have so much in common. I want to see that conversation.
It would be good. There's room for more. I hope that there is another season of Tales of the Jedi, and honestly, I hope that it features Dooku and Ahsoka, and we can elaborate on their stories a little bit more and get some more out of there. I mean, we've gotten plenty of Ahsoka. Really, it's Dooku that needs a little bit more, but I wouldn't say no to more Ahsoka either. Yes. So thank you, Gilster10, for that question. Let's take this next one from Dr. Hugh 17, who says, 2 questions from me tonight. Don't mind if I do. Quite recently, I was revisiting Stingray, a pre-Thunderbird show about a submarine, for anyone unfamiliar. And I was wondering if you peeps think that Star Wars could explore underwater conflicts and civilizations more. While I acknowledge that Star Wars takes place in ground, air, and space environments, I can't think of many sea-based examples beyond the Clone Wars or Legends. And I would love to see Star Wars dive into ocean environments more deeply. For my second question, what non-Star Wars projects / interests are you looking forward to watching? Wednesday season 2 is on my bucket list, and I'd love to get my hands on the 4K versions of the Sean Connery era of James Bond. I'm also looking forward to the War Between the Land and the Sea, the Doctor Who spinoff, since the episode The Reality War, the season 2 finale, left me feeling underwhelmed, but I'm looking forward to Unit having their own spinoff show. Also, Matt Smith in Star Wars, Geronimo. So ocean worlds in Star Wars. I mean, it's funny. We were just talking about Gandi Tardikovski. I feel like the most iconic version of underwater Star Wars is from the Micro series. It's one of the few things that the main Clone Wars series, the Filoni Clone Wars series, really went out of their way to adapt from the old show. Right. Everything else was kind of its own thing. They left, we didn't have Mace Windu fighting an army of droids on a grass planet or anything like that. Anakin didn't fight Ventress in Yavin 4. Like, none of that stuff happened. But they did want to do their own take on the underwater battle with Kit Fisto. I think in part because it was just so cool in Tartakovsky's version, and those guys made it look so good that they wanted to try their own version of it in Clone Wars. And so you get those two versions of it. And that is kind of it. The comics go back to Mon Cala a few points. Prince Lee Char shows up again. But yeah, it's a pretty rare thing to see underwater Star Wars. I guess with the one major exception of Otogunga in the Phantom Menace. We do literally go to an underwater city in one of the movies.
That's the
pretty
one of the first things we see in the prequels is an underwater city, which is cool. But that's still like there's
always
still
a bigger
lot
fish.
and I think that's one thing. That's one of my gripe about modern Star Wars is that modern Star Wars has just been kind of like, oh, we need a new planet, make it a forest or a desert or something. Let's just find a real location to either base it on or film there. Well, let's do that. And I think George was very adamant about like, let's do something new. I very much remember, like, obviously the micro series was great, and then opening season 4 of Clone Wars with the Mon Cala arc, like that was like, this is big time. Like this show is really leveled up, not just in the sense of like the visuals and like the mechanics of like all these new elements and like this whole battle underwater, but also just like the things of like, we've never seen anything like this in Star Wars before. Like this is crazy. So I think that, and the fact that Star Wars is so diverse, or at least is supposed to be very diverse in its, you know, how things and how there's civilizations in a variety of things. And, you know, we kind of got a little bit of that. There's that water planet they go to in Mandalorian, which has a bunch of Quarren above the water, just on boats. When you know the Quarren, like, why are you on a boat, Quarren? You can swim. Why are you doing this? But I want them to do more of that. Like, and I think maybe the Mandalorian isn't the place to do that because it's a TV show and doing stuff underwater is probably very expensive. But let a Star Wars movie do that, or let us animated Star Wars project do more underwater stuff, because I think it's just cool, guys. It's just cool.
Yeah, it's a good fit. Yeah, it's funny as Hugh asks this question. I've been reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Wow.
The classic sci-fi novel by Jules Verne. And like, it is a little bit of a reminder, like, we know so little about our own planet and our own oceans that like there is still so much like potential there for stories and interesting stuff. And Star Wars is a grand galaxy with many inhabited planets that we know of and that sort of thing. So I can see why going underwater isn't top priority in Star Wars, because there are so many places you can go, and it is Star Wars. It's not Sea Wars. So you emphasize space and planets and that sort of thing, but there's certainly potential there. And Clone Wars, both versions of it have shown that. So yeah, let's go back to it. Yeah, new animated series. Get Gandi Tardikovski on that. Let's do that. Let him do that. That'd be great. Animated miniseries or ongoing series or anything. It'd be fun. All right, Ben, what non-Star Wars things are you looking forward to right now?
I've been thinking about this because I think most of the things that I was looking forward to have come and gone, at least this year. So I will say that I am looking forward to rewatching the big July movies, the Jurassic World Rebirth, Fantastic Four, and Superman, all three movies that I really did enjoy. I'm gonna actually, I haven't watched. I just got Disney Plus back. I'm gonna watch Ironheart. Looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
I have not seen it yet. And Peacemaker's coming up. I'm a big James Gunn fan in general, so like I love the first season of that, so I'm looking forward to that. So and then I'm just looking for other stuff to watch. I'm like, what is it that's like 5 years old that I haven't watched? You know, should I watch the Severance now? Should I watch The Bear? I have Hulu now. You know, what should I catch up on? What should I educate myself on?
Watch The Bear and just think that guy's gonna be Rod of the Hutt. It'd be wild. For me, I'm right now, I'm kind of in like a black hole of pop culture because I've been so focused on getting my panels ready for Fan Expo that I haven't really been consuming anything else or watching anything else or even really thinking about anything else. This Untold Stories panel in particular has been an all-encompassing like experience to prep for it. So I don't want to be all alone on the screen. So like I kind of have like been in a bit of a black hole, and it also didn't help that I was speed reading Sense and Sensibility a few weeks ago because I was going to see the play version of it, and I wanted to have read the book before I saw the play. And so for about a week there, all I was doing was working on that panel and reading Sense and Sensibility and like nothing else. So it was all Star Wars and all Jane Austen all the time. So I'm sort of looking forward to Fan Expo ending so I'm looking forward to Fan Expo. I'm looking forward to the panels and all this stuff. I'm looking forward to being sort of on the other side of it so I can go, all right, what did I miss? What did I miss? What else is coming up? What else am I looking forward to? Because there's always, there's always new movies, new shows, good stuff to see, new books, and things to read. I've been wanting to get into some like, I loved the Superman movie so much that like I want to get into some of the comics and stuff. I picked up the Supergirl comic that next year's movie is based on and stuff. So like I want to get to those things. I will get to those things, but in a little over a week once I have completed my other responsibilities and can enjoy them properly. I will also say, like Q, I'm looking forward to the war between the land and the sea. I was saddened by how the last season of Doctor Who ended. I wanted more Shutagawa, and I'm sad that we aren't getting that. And you can really tell that last episode was recut and reshot in 17 different ways. But this war between the land and the sea idea sounds pretty interesting. So I'll give it a whirl, and that might be the last new Doctor Who content for a while. So I'm going to enjoy it. All right, let's do one final one here. This one comes from Ingenious, who says, I know everyone is all upset about on Andor's behalf for no main actors getting Emmy nominations, but what do you think about Skeleton Crew getting shut out, particularly the music from Mick Giacchino, as well as the visual effects team that brought Neil and various other creatures and environments to life? Yeah, the music was great. Neil was great. The effects were great. I think that's just kind of the expected standard for Star Wars. They just sort of expect those things to be great, and they have to like go beyond just being great and have to be like next level stuff, which Andor was across the board.
Yeah, like obviously in a perfect world run by me, like Skeleton Crew and Andor would just get the best series. They would all the cast and crew would be on stage. They would share. They would each have statues for best series. They would get all the Emmys. But that can't happen. I think that's kind of the run of me. I think that's the why, like, yes, I love Skeleton Crew. I wanted to get the accolades.
I don't know, Ben, if you were intentionally channeling Anakin in the field talking to Padme there. You're like, who should make them? You? No, not me. But someone wise. They should be made to agree.
Well, if it works.
Sounds an awful lot like a dictatorship. Yeah. Boy, Anakin was online guy before, or other people were.
Oh God, let's not get into that. But as I've stated many times, I adore Skeleton Crew. I really do. Like, I think it might be one of my favorite Star Wars soundtracks. Like, I listen to it a lot. I listened to it especially a lot after it came out, and really, and I'm someone like I buy all the movie soundtracks when they come out. I'm not so keen on buying all the soundtracks. I'll admit some soundtracks didn't hit home with me. Cough, Obi-Wan, cough, Acolyte. Like some of them just like I just like.
Well, you don't listen to The Power of Two on repeat.
Look, song still slaps, but it's not my thing.
You. Yeah.
But so I would love to see like Mick Giacchino. I think he's got a great career on his hands. He's obviously a chip off the old block. Would love to see him get some more accolades. But he'll have plenty more time for that. Yeah, I'm rooting for Andor right now. Okay, not everything can win the Emmy. Like Diego Luna said recently, very wisely. He's like, it's not, nobody's getting robbed here. If I was getting an Emmy, somebody else that deserved it would not be getting accolades. Like, there's only so much to go around, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. There should be an Emmy for best trailer music use. I should give that to Andor for
that's true.
Revolution Starts Now. That was really good. That was the moment we knew that season 2 was going to be as good as season 1, if not better. when they're like, you know what, screw it, we're doing a rock and roll trailer. That was the moment right there.
Yeah, Star Wars we've broken through the barrier. Like Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Andor, like pop music and Star Wars, we're here. It's here. It's here to stay.
Yeah, you're not getting away from it, no matter how much you might want to. All right. I think that's as good a place as any to leave things and begin to wind things down and wrap things up for this week. Thank you everybody for listening. We will be back same time, same place next week. How does this go? How does the outro go again? In between shows,
I always just am totally bewildered anytime I do this thing. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. Ben, thank you for being on. I know I'm supposed to thank you. That's the one thing.
Is this where I'm supposed to say, hey guys, it was great being on? I don't even know. No. No.
Meta with our own show.
I know. It's just if you think about it too much, you should really start to get in your head. You're like, what am I actually supposed to say? It's bad. But no, this was great and unexpected. Literally, I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys today. There was no show notes when I woke up this morning. There was nothing. There was nothing set up. The stream wasn't set up. I didn't know what the show was going to be about. I didn't even have a title. And then at lunchtime, they're like, here's the Rebuild the Galaxy trailer. I'm like, yes, perfect timing. Here's what we're talking about. So yeah, even though we ended up talking about Ron Howard more than that. So, no. And when there's a slow news week, we've still got a lot going on. So looking forward to whatever happens next week.
Ben, appropriately considering the show was delayed by you, that you're having a technical issue, you made it right until the end there without freezing, and you just froze for a minute and then looked like you were on a potato can. But now you're back. But we're glad.
I can't complain now
for the end of the show. Yeah, it was wild. I actually completely didn't see that the Lego Star Wars trailer had come out. I needed you to put that in our group chat that had happened. I thought we were just going to answer questions from Joel Davis for an hour. That's all I thought we were going to do.
We have at least an hour, if not 2 hours worth of Joel Davis questions, which I'm totally fine with just doing this whole show like that. I'm totally fine.
It'll be a special. Joel, when's your birthday? That should be just do a special. It'd be fun. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody who submitted questions. Thank you to the live chat. Hope you enjoyed listening along live. Again, reminder, punch the subscribe button, Chewy. You'll never miss an episode. Super chat with us during the shows. I mean, only got about 2 minutes left to do that if you're listening live here. Or you can become a channel member if you want to support us. You want to drop a few pennies in the tip jar. And if you want to support us in other ways, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review on any platform that allows you to do just that. Join the Discord for more game nights, movie nights, all sorts of fun stuff. Link in the description, and follow us on social media at the SWU. And again, reminder, if you're going to Fan Expo Canada next weekend, that's August 21st to the 24th. On the 22nd and the 23rd, I've got panels, Star Wars The Untold Stories on the 22nd at 10:30 a.m. and Celebrating Star Wars on the 23rd at this is the old graphic from before they did the time change at 4:15 p.m. In the afternoon. Do come to both of them. They are in Theater 5, aka Room 709. It will be a great time, and don't be surprised if your social media feed is blown up with reminders about that over the next week or so. What else did I want to plug? Oh yeah, Hot Off the Press. If you want to read what I'm thinking about Star Wars, DominicGJones.substack.com. You can do that over there. All right, that's it. We're out of here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As I said, we'll be back next week. We hope you'll join us then. Until then, for Chris and Hannah, who weren't here, for Ben, who was here, my name is Dominic, and may the Force be with you. It's a wrap.